All right, welcome everyone. I am glad to see you all here with us today. So thank you for coming. This is the presentation from the Center for International Students and Scholars, or the CISS. My name is Anna Garson, and I'm here with my colleague Brittany Mackey, who was just speaking with you all. And I will introduce our office in a little bit, the other members of our office who are not here with us today. And today we are going to go over a few things. We're going to talk a little bit about what our office does and how you may interact with our office, and some immigration related information that will be necessary for you to know throughout your time here. Let's move to the next. Okay. So as you can see, there are some of you here joining us today in this presentation, but we actually have a much bigger international student population on campus. So we have about 576 undergraduates and 250 graduate international students on campus. These numbers were collected last semester. So it's a little bit lower than what we usually have. This past year, there has been a little bit of a decline in our international student enrollment due to travel restrictions and the pandemic. But we do still have about 1,125 students from all over the world on campus, and you are a very important part of our student population. So who we are. So as I mentioned, we're the Center for International Students and Scholars. We go by the CISS because it is shorter and easier to say. But as I mentioned, I'm Anna Garson, and I'm a Senior International Student and Scholar Advisor. I'm joined today by my colleague, Brittany Mackey, who is an International Student Advisor as well. We also have in our office, Teresa Lamoureux. She goes by Terry. She is our office coordinator. She is often the first face that you will see. If we were physically in the office, she would be sitting at our front desk. But she still is the first point person you may come into contact with in the CISS. She generally answers our phones. She may answer some of your emails. And as I mentioned, she does usually sit at the front desk when we're in the office. We also have Nia DeYoung, who's the director of our office, and Christine Lookner, who is the Associate Dean of Student Equity and Inclusion. So she oversees our office along with other offices, including Spiritual Life, Gender and Sexuality Student Programs, and some other offices that fall under student equity and inclusion. So she also serves an advising role in the CISS. So you may see her name as well in your advising appointments or in emails. And lastly, we have our student employees and our interns. Again, these would be the people that you would usually see right up at the front, who would be there to greet you at in our office, but they are also working, some of them in person and some of them remotely this semester. So you can call us all by our first names. Others at Bentley, others professors or other staff members may prefer to be greeted by other names. So feel free to ask as you're getting to know different staff members at Bentley. But we are a friendly office. You can feel free to call us by our first names. And we are all very happy that you're here with us. We know it's a little bit of an unusual time, and we would love to be able to see you all face to face and shake hands with you. But we are very happy to at least be able to interact with you virtually. So what do we do? So these are some of the things that our office can help you with during your time at Bentley. So arrival and immigration registration. So you've likely already been working with our office to get your I-20s, your visa paperwork. So we help you before you even arrive with the initial process. We also help you as you during your time at Bentley throughout your studies will help you with immigration advising. So any questions you may have about your visa, changing your status, or changing laws and regulations. As you all likely are aware, you are on an F-1 visa, and so there's specific regulations that you have to follow. And along with that, we can help you with employment options. So as international students, there are certain restrictions and certain authorizations you can get. We'll go over that very briefly today, but we also offer other sessions during your time at Bentley so that you can learn more about those opportunities. We help you with travel, so advising as to the travel documents you need to carry. We help you by giving you travel signatures on your I-20s, which we'll discuss later. And aside from immigration, we can help you with adjusting to life in the US. So as you get used to Bentley, get used to living in the US, we serve as a resource to you. If you have any concerns in the classroom or on campus or otherwise, we are here to help. And along those lines, we often serve as the first point of contact for our international students. So if you have a question about something that may not be for the CISS, we can certainly help direct you in the right direction. So whether it's housing or an academic department, counseling, another office, we can help make sure that you get your questions answered. And lastly, we also offer events or programs throughout the year. So to celebrate certain holidays, educational events, we host several programs with our international students as volunteers, which we'll discuss a little bit later. So we will let you know about those programs as they happen. So how to contact us. So as I mentioned, usually we are in our office. So if we were physically on campus, we would be on the 3rd floor of the Student Center. So the Student Center is the big building on campus. You'll find the dining hall there. You will find several other offices. We are on the top floor in Suite 310. But currently, as you're probably aware, like many offices, we're operating mostly remotely, so mostly online. We still have the same hours that we would if we were in person. We are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. So how can you contact us since we're not physically in the office every day? So there's multiple ways. So firstly, we have open advising hours every weekday. So Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And every day we have an advisor there who is ready to answer your questions, usually brief questions, 5 to 10 minutes. And there is no appointment needed for that. And the Zoom link stays the same throughout the semester. So you can find that right here. It's also available on our website. It's in our email signatures as well. You can always ask us for it if you can't find it. And again, that is available to you every day, Monday through Friday. The fastest way to reach us is through email. So you've likely already emailed us at ga_CISS@bentley.edu. So document submission, so if you're submitting a form to us, will also be via email. We all check it, all of our advisors, so you can address your email to any one of us. And we generally respond, if not within one business day, within a few business days. You can also reach us via telephone at 781-891-2829. This is not for advising. We ask that you attend our Zoom advising hours, but if you do have a question, a general question, if you can't find the information about something on our website, or you want to know how to submit something, you can always call us. And then of course, for urgent issues where you need to speak to someone right away. We offer one-on-one appointments on a limited basis. So as I mentioned, most of our advising is done via Zoom and via email. But if you do need a longer appointment, or if it's about a personal matter, on our website, there is a link for you to request a one-on-one appointment with an advisor. And you can also just email us and request this, and we will make sure that, that you are set up with an appointment. So last semester, we did have members of our office in the office itself 1 day a week. That was Wednesdays. I'm not sure if it will be the same day this semester, but at some point, probably not until February, we may have 1 day a week where we will have members of our office in the office for very specific purposes. So if you need to pick up something that we have received in the mail for you, or something along those lines, you would be able to email us first. We would ask that you email us to let us know you're coming, and then come to our physical office space. So as always, or as is the case throughout campus, you would need to come wearing a mask, and we ask that you bring your student ID. We also ask that you don't come in a group, just in order to maintain social distance. And again, email us before dropping by. We will let you know. We'll probably be sending an email out in the next several weeks to let you know what our schedule will be, as that may change due to campus restrictions or the days of availability for our staff members. All right, so before we get into some of the immigration information, I also wanted to share with you a little bit about our website. So we have a central website, bentley.edu/CISS, where we have a lot of general information. So from travel to employment, to events, all of this information is in one central place. So I'm going to see if we can take a look quickly. So this is the main page of our website. You can just type in bentley.edu/CISS, and Brittany is kindly scrolling for us just so that you can see what it looks like. As you will see at the very top of the screen, there are tabs, and one of them is new students, current students, employment resources. So you all are now current students. So it's a little confusing. New students is actually referring to students before they arrive. So now, once you start the semester, you're a current student, and you'll find information there about driver's license, social security, regulations about maintaining or full course of study, information related to your academics. And then also we have a tab for employment resources at the top, where you'll find general information about different work authorization types. And again, I recommend that at these first few weeks that you go to our website, click around, make sure you know what's on there. We also have COVID related information on there, frequently asked questions. So we recommend that you do check it, or check and see if your question can be answered there as well before contacting us. So here on our main page, you'll see there's a lot of information about COVID and how it relates to immigration regulation. Thank you, Brittany. All right, so just a couple more slides and then we'll turn it over to Brittany for some immigration related information. But we talked a little bit about how we can help you, the ways that you can help us. So first of all, our top priority, this year and always is your safety and your health. So we want to make sure that you feel safe and that you have the resources you need in case you are feeling sick. So as always, please contact a health center or even our office, any office, if you're not feeling well or you need assistance. Also, if you're not feeling well, please do stay home. You can reach out to our office or any other office and we will be happy to find someone who can help you. Also staying in status. So maintaining your F-1 status is a shared responsibility. So we give you the information and it is your responsibility to both know the information or be familiar with the information and make sure that you're following the regulations. So we're not the government. Our job is not to to enforce the regulation or to find you if you're not following it. It is to help you. It is to make sure that you are understanding it so that you can stay in compliance and there's no negative impact for you now or in the future for your visa status. You can also, another way you can help us, so all of you should have received an email this morning that was a virtual immigration registration form. So if you were all on campus with us, we would have you come to our office and submit certain documents because we need to go into the immigration database or SEVIS and register you. So we have to say that you've arrived and that you're maintaining a full course load and all of those things. So because we won't be able to do that in person this year, we sent you a form. It should have been sent to your Bentley email. And it's for all students who will be studying in the US this semester. So if you're studying virtually, don't worry about this. You should let us know if you haven't already that you will be studying from your home country, but this is specifically for students to fill out if you're coming to the US. So you'll confirm your arrival, you'll confirm that you're in at least one hybrid course. You'll upload a document called your I-94, which we list on the actual form, the instructions for you to get that. And we ask that you complete this by February 1st. So again, we sent you an email this morning. We will likely be sending you multiple over the next couple of weeks, reminding you, but this is very important so that we can register your record and you can start your F-1 status.
All right. Okay, that's me.
So I think I have one more thing is that due to the pandemic, as I mentioned, the government has provided some temporary guidance to certain regulations. So generally there's a list of F-1 regulations that has to do with the number of classes you need to be in, employment, all of those different things. But because of the pandemic, they had to change some things. So just to go over briefly what some of those things are, they have temporarily allowed us to issue documents electronically, which means that we are able to share I-20s with you with reproduced signatures. So that's great so that we can get those to you quicker. There have also been certain changes to in-person course requirements, which we'll discuss. And also certain changes to your ability to work remotely if you are authorized in some form to have a job related to your F-1 status. There are also other changes related to how long you can stay outside of the US. And all of this guidance, so it's changing and it is available on the main page of our website. So that frequently asked questions section that Brittany showed us earlier. It's really important always, but now more than ever, that you're checking your Bentley email because these regulations are subject to change. So things are changing quickly. And so we want to make sure that if the government makes any changes that we're able to get that information to you as quickly as possible. So check your Bentley email regularly. All right, so I will pass it on to Brittany.
Thank you. Okay, so I get to speak with you all about SEVIS and CISS reporting responsibilities. So SEVIS, in case you have not heard of it yet, is the acronym for Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. That is the system, the database that we use to communicate with the government, as Anna mentioned, when you register with us to make sure that we confirm that you've arrived and that you're in classes and studying. So the database is there and your I-20 information lives in the system. So everything that's on that paper is digitally in SEVIS. As CISS, we are required by law to report information in a timely manner. We have information on our website about when things need to be reported to us. So for example, if your address changes, you know, anything around changes in your schedule as far as how many credits you may be taking, we ask that you contact us as soon as possible because those are things that we need to update in the SEVIS system. And of course, we need to keep, we need your help to keep the information current. So information updates, I mentioned, I got a little bit ahead of myself, change of address, report to us within 10 days, deciding to withdraw from Bentley. That is more of a conversation, so please definitely contact us before you make your final decision and we will let you know some options that you have around that. Dropping below full course load, again, that does require approval from CISS among other offices on campus. So a conversation. You transfer to another school, there's a form that you complete, information on our website about that as well, and any changes to your I-20 document. If your name needs to change, sometimes folks change passports that they have as far as their citizenship on their I-20. So just keep those things in mind. Updating your address. You will do that in Workday Student. I hope you've already been in Workday Student. That is the main database that everyone, all the offices at Bentley uses. And thankfully that communicates with SEVIS essentially. So you can update your address there and we will know. Make sure that you keep your home address. So there should be a non-US address listed as well as your local address, which would be your address in the US once you arrive. Immigration documents to keep in mind, passport, have that on you, your F-1 visa. So that is usually, that will be inside of your passport. It's like a sticker that should be placed on a page in your passport. The entry stamp, you may or may not get an entry stamp depending on which port of entry you enter the US. So depending on the city, they will actually stamp your passport. Some do not, and we'll see an example of that later. The I-94 travel record is electronic and can be accessed electronically. As Anna mentioned, it's through a website. You type in your passport information as well as your name. And we also have some tips and tricks around getting, making sure you can access that. And then of course your I-20 that you will have digitally. And if you're traveling, we do suggest you print it out if possible. Though I will note, if you are flying into Logan directly, the Boston airport, they are accepting a digital version of your I-20, so you could have it on a device. We're not sure about other cities, unfortunately. So your passport must be valid 6 months into the future. So it's important to check your expiration date. I did check your expiration date as I was issuing your I-20. So you should be all set, but it never hurts to have a second set of eyes, look over it. You can renew your passport within the US. You know, we have your countries should have embassies and consulates here. So we can definitely help you with that process if you need to, or should your passport expire while you are here. So the visa, this is the sticker that I mentioned is in your passport on one of your pages. We love to use this analogy. If you've been to another institution, you've probably heard it before. We call the visa the key to enter the US. So if think of the border, I guess, as the door, the visa is your key. And we really like this analogy because you really only need it to get in. Once you're in the US, you don't need it. To get around, you don't need to actually produce it or show it. However, when you check in with us, even virtually, we will maybe have you look at it. So once you're in the door, as it says, you don't need it anymore. That is the main thing. It's often confused. I may be getting ahead of myself. Let me go. Okay, we'll come back. A little bit later in the presentation, we'll talk about the difference between your visa and your F-1 status. So your visa is different than your I-20. I know sometimes those can be confusing. So we're gonna have a nice little quiz for you all. I hope you can maybe reply in the chat to have a little bit of interaction. So what does my F-1 visa allow me to do? A, stay in the US until it expires. B, work in the US. C, ask permission to enter the US, and F-1 status, or D, all of the above. And I realize I will add some more information about the visa, but let's see what answers we come up with first.
Don't be shy, it's not for a grade.
I know, it's like I don't see anything. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of C's. Oops, No, well, there you know the answer. Yes. C, it allows you to ask permission to enter the US. But I do want to address A, as far as staying in the US until it expires. Currently, with the current policy, once you enter the US with your F-1 visa, on the visa, it should have something called a duration of status remark. It should say D/S when you enter the US. That also should be on your I-94. All that means is as long as you are in the US and you are in valid F-1 status, you are attending classes, you are reporting your address changes to us when that happens, staying in contact with CISS, that you may remain in the US even after your visa expires. You just have to enter before it expires. That can be a little bit tricky. It may change in the future, and we will definitely let you know, as Anna says, if any guidance changes. Now, another question. I must leave the US if my visa expires. Is this true or false? Oh, people caught on. Fast responses. Very good. It is false. As I just mentioned, yep. Your visa is the key to get in. Once you're in, you are good as long as you maintain your status. So part of maintaining your status, of course, is making sure your I-20 is up to date and your SEVIS record is valid. As we mentioned before, they are connected. So something else to keep in mind, if you change your major or your program, those updates do come through Workday as well. And just be sure that you will get a new I-20 or you request a new I-20 from us when those changes happen to make sure that your records are all accurate. And then the note at the bottom, if you do leave the US after your visa does expire, you will need to apply for a new visa. All that really means is that you contact us to let us know and make sure that you have an updated I-20 to take with you to the US Embassy or Consulate in your home country or the country where you will apply for your visa. Okay, so at the bottom of your F-1 visa, that sticker inside of your passport, you should see this little line and there should be an M for entries. That means that you have multiple entries. So as I mentioned, that means as long as the visa is valid, you can come to the US and leave the US and then re-enter. And then the expiration date is important to note as well, because after that date, if you are outside of the US, you would need to apply for another visa. You're going to hear this information a lot. It is a little bit repetitive, but we really want to make sure that you have all the information you need so that you can enter and exit the US as easily as possible. So this is the entry stamp that I mentioned earlier that sometimes you get at the airport, sometimes you will not, or at the border. Sometimes we have people who may drive into the US. It really depends whether or not you get it. If you do get the actual stamp, it's important to make sure that the class you enter in says F1, that's your visa type, and the until says the D/S that I mentioned, which is the duration of status. So again, D/S just means as long as you are maintaining your F1 status, your I-20 is valid, that you may remain in the US regardless of your visa expiration date. More information on the entry stamp. Make sure those two things are there. Very, very important. Don't fret if you don't get a stamp. Just maybe one less souvenir you have. Other things to look out for, if you've had other visas to the US, particularly a B1 visa or B2, which is a tourist visa, make sure that the CBP officer at the border sees your F1 visa and knows that you're entering as an F1 student, because if you are admitted to the US, so if you enter the US and your stamp, if you receive it, or your I-94 shows a different class, shows a different visa type, for example, tourist, you will not be able to study. It's pretty easy to correct this, and we have information on how to do so, but it's easiest to correct it in the moment while you're at the border. Okay. So just a side by side of the two things that we've been talking about. Physical label on the passport is your F-1 visa that you get at the US consulate or embassy outside of the US. And your F-1 status is what you are granted upon entry. So you don't, once you pass through the border, you are now considered to be in F-1 status. There's nothing really, I don't think there's a physical representation of your F-1 status besides, keeping in contact with us and maintaining your I-20 things. But just keep that in mind. Some people use them interchangeably, but the F-1 status is what you have as long as you are in the US after you are admitted.
All right, so I am going to take over from here and talk a little bit about your I-94. So we talked about it earlier. I said you would upload it with your initial registration form. So an I-94, all it really is just a record of your arrivals and your departure. So they used to put a little form in your passport, but now it is all electronic. So there's a website and it's linked there, but also in that form that we sent out to all of you this morning, you should be able to access it. And basically what you do is enter your personal information. So enter your name, your birthday, your passport number, and you will get a printout of your last arrival or your latest arrival. So it will say the date, the class of admission, as Brittany was talking about, so F1. It will say that you're admitted for duration of status. And you can also access a long history of your travels through this website. So it's important that you check it occasionally. Again, as Brittany mentioned, not always will they put that stamp in your passport. And it's good to check anytime you travel and re-enter internationally that they're entering you in the correct status, because mistakes do happen. And sometimes if you have another visa in your passport, they may accidentally enter you in that status, and it's something to know so that you can get corrected. So your I-20 form. So the I-20 itself, you should all have one. It was issued to you before you applied for your visa. So this is really, it shows your F1 status, and it shows your personal information. So the program of study that you are in, your name, your passport country and nationality, and how you are paying for school. So it is very important that you keep this document. Again, we recommend that you print it. You should sign it at the bottom. And you should know what's on this document. So make sure you've reviewed it and you know what's there, so that if there's any changes that need to be made, you can contact us. So one of the most important things on this form, which is hard to see in this presentation, but is the program end date. So you will have in that third little box on page 1 of your I-20, there is information about when we anticipate that you'll finish your degree. This may not be 100% correct. It's an estimate that we gave students when they came. Maybe you will graduate before that, and on some rare occasions, you may need an extension. It is important that you know that date, so that if you do need an extension or you do need for us to shorten it, that you can let us know. You will also receive multiple I-20s throughout your time here. So you could receive one because you change your major. You could receive one because we need to give you a travel signature. There's many different reasons why you could need a new one. So it's important that you keep all of them. So even though your most recent one will always be the active one, it is important that you keep all of them. So your I-20 is issued in that database that Brittany was mentioning, so the SEVIS system. So again, it's the database we use, and we're obligated to report or authorize certain things. So most of the information that's in your SEVIS record appears on your I-20, and we want to make sure that that information that's going to the government is accurate. So let us know if anything changes. And also, as I mentioned previously, we can now send you electronic I-20s for you to print and sign. If you need a new one, we will likely send a link to you in your Bentley email. So another little quiz: what information is on my I-20? The program I am enrolled in, the date that I start at Bentley, and the date I'm expected to graduate, my major, or all of the above? Quick answer. Awesome. So you all are correct. It is all of the above. So there is a lot of information on your I-20. If you didn't know the answer to that, make sure you take a look at it and see all of the things that are listed there, so you know what when to contact us if it changes. So we already talked about this. The validity dates are one of the most important parts of your I-20. If you're graduating early, if you need more time, or if you're changing programs, or it's just incorrect, please let us know. So on page 3 of your I-20, I don't know if I mentioned this, I know we'll be mentioning it later on. Page 2, there's not much information on there now. There is a place for travel signatures, which we'll talk about. Page 3 of your I-20 is this very small writing, and all of this information is about your F-1 status, so rules and regulations. This is all information that we give you. I recommend you read it so you know what's on it. It may help you fall asleep at night. It's pretty boring stuff, but I recommend that you read it just to have a general overview. It's all information that we're sharing with you during this presentation about your F-1 status and things you can and cannot do while you're here. As I mentioned, keep all of your I-20s. You may graduate with only one. It's very rare. Most of the time you will have several. So keep all of the new ones that you get and file the old ones away. Keep them for future reference. You will be asked, in work authorization applications in the future to provide photocopies of these.
Okay, so I'm up again. Sorry, I minimized something, so it looks a little different. Okay. So your immigration status is not the same as your student status. This is important to think about, particularly around policies. Most of the information that you'll hear from CISS is related to your immigration status and immigration policies. We will share certain policies that are Bentley specific, but those are related to your student status. There is a link here, and you may have already seen this, but information about Bentley's academic performance standards outlined in the student handbook, but just know that they are different things. Do you have anything to add about this, Anna?
So I think here an important note is that if you cannot for any reason study at Bentley anymore because you don't because you're unable to attend, or you don't attend classes, or you do something that violates the student handbook, then you won't have an I-20 anymore, which unfortunately means that you cannot remain in the US anymore. So just make sure that you're following all of the academic performance standards and the conduct standards at Bentley so that you can maintain your status.
Yes, and apologies for the confusion. I'm going to read it as it says, that your immigration status is dependent on your student status. Okay, and so maintaining your student status does require full-time study. We have both students here tonight who are undergraduates and graduates. So as an undergraduate student, you must be enrolled in 12 credits. And then for graduate students, you must be enrolled in 9 credits. Dropping below full-time study is only allowed in your last semester, or if it's pre-authorized for a specific reason. So the second part, pre-authorized, again, requires you making an appointment with somebody in CISS. We'll be talking to you about your options, as well as probably getting approval from the academic side. And then as far as being in your last semester, oftentimes students maybe only need, I don't know, 6 credits, 10 credits, something that's below the full-time status to graduate. So then you are allowed to just take the courses that you need to graduate because you are in your last semester. Online classes. So the main regulation is up there. I'm not going to focus too much on that because we are in COVID times, I say. So the current guidance based on COVID-19, the exception from SEVP, is that for you all who are considered new F-1 students, you must be enrolled in at least one hybrid course. For continuing students, they may study remotely. That means they do not have to have a hybrid course. It's important to note this because you may have some continuing students in your classes, and if you're asking them for information, getting some information from them, just know that because it is your first semester here and you are considered, again, a new F-1 student, that it's a little bit different for you. And then as far as the hybrid course, we do encourage you, as you'll see at the top up here, to attend as many in-person classes as you possibly can for your hybrid course. Okay. So again, as new F-1 students, required to be registered in at least one hybrid course, and as I mentioned, attend more than 50, or at least 50%, let's say, 50% or more in-person meetings if you can. If you are a SEVIS transfer student or a change of level, so SEVIS transfer are students who had SEVIS or F-1 status at another institution in the US, and then you transferred your record to Bentley. It's easy to tell this because in the issue reason of your I-20, in that first section of your I-20 near the bottom, it'll say issue reason, and you'll see transfer pending dash, the name of your previous institution. So another thing to note about that is if you also are a SEVIS transfer, when we register you, you'll be receiving an updated I-20 that will not have the transfer pending anymore. Change of level students are for Falcon fast tracks. We might call them double Falcons. So students who maybe completed a degree at Bentley already and are now in another program. You all do not have the course requirements of registering in one hybrid class. So again, if you've had F-1 status previously, whether you're a SEVIS transfer student or a change of level student, you're not required to register in one hybrid class. Now, that does mean that you immediately had SEVIS status. If you had SEVIS status 3 years ago, last year, even a while ago, if you left the US and you weren't maintaining status, you do need to be registered in one hybrid class. I hope it's not too confusing, but if it is, please email us, call us, come to a Zoom advising hours and ask. And then of course, again, SEVIS transfer students and change of level students may study all online for their courses under the current SEVP guidance for this semester, spring 2021. Online courses. Students who have never entered the US on an F-1 visa may take courses online remotely from outside the US. I'm not sure if we have anybody on here who that is the case for. All this means is that your F-1 status has not begun. So you are considered a Bentley student, you're progressing toward your degree. However, you are not in F-1 status. That's not a problem. You'll be working with me and other advisors at CISS to make sure that we get your I-20 to you, the proper one, for when you enter the US and you begin your F-1 status. And again, your F-1 status will begin after you apply for your visa and then you enter the US. Checking my cheat sheet. Is it still me? Okay. Summer vacation. You can stay in the US or you can travel. Many students have decided to stay in the US because travel has not been the easiest right now because of the travel restrictions based on COVID-19. You also have the option of whether or not you want to take courses. It's considered a vacation period, so you do not have to study at all. You will still maintain your F-1 status. Some students decide to take classes because that helps, progress toward your degree, and maybe you finish a little bit earlier. It's up to you. Many students will complete internships during this time, so just keep that in mind. You Summer is very open. It's totally up to you. You can study or you can relax. Traveling in the US, we encourage you to take your documents with you. Right now, to get around the US, they have I think, set back the requirement to get a real ID, which is kind of an enhanced license to travel. You do not need your passport to travel in the US, but you do need a government issued photo identification. So if you have your passport, you can travel, that's fine. I personally like to travel within the US with a non-passport government issued ID, just in case. I think, passports are very precious. I wouldn't want anybody to lose them. So keep that in mind if you do travel around. Outside of the US, of course, you do need a passport. You need your valid F-1 visa stamp, which is in your passport, that label. And most importantly, you need your most recent valid I-20 with you. And that section that Anna talked about on page 2 is where we sign, and you get a travel endorsement or a travel signature. So we are also able to issue a new I-20s with the travel signature electronically. There is a form on our website that you can complete to request it, and you complete the form, comes directly to our email, and we email it back to you, the link. A note, again, travel during COVID-19 emergency should be undertaken with caution. The biggest thing I would say is, remember, the US is very large, and the reality is that each state within the US has different regulations on how they are dealing with COVID-19. So when you enter Massachusetts, if you're coming from a different state, that may be different than entering Florida, for example. It may be even different than entering New Hampshire, which neighbors us. So it's very, very important to think about which state you're going to, the requirements to enter the states, excuse me, and then to check about re-entry into Massachusetts. A lot of things change daily, maybe weekly. There are usually press conferences around this, but the best resources are honestly government websites. You can check each state website. They should have on their first page information about COVID travel, who is permitted to come, different things on regulations, because you want to make sure that you're following each state's regulations very, very carefully if you do choose to travel within the US. Okay, this is the travel signature I mentioned. We are able to give electronic signatures. They're very, very easy. Best to secure a travel signature before you leave. You only need a travel signature if you plan to travel outside of the US. And travel signatures are valid for 12 months from the signing date. So that is a great thing. If you get an updated I-20 from us, a lot of times we give you a travel signature right away, just so that you have it in case you do need to leave the US for any reason. I think this is our last quiz. Thank you for bearing with us. When should I get my I-20 signed for travel? A, every time I leave the US. B, once a year. C, if I am traveling inside the US. Or D, if I'm taking a year off from school to work for Google. Oops. No, I just cheated. I didn't even have time to look. Perfect. So once a year, it's good to have just in case. Every time you leave the US, you don't necessarily need it. You can certainly check with us every time you leave the US. And more than likely, we will say, oh, well, ask you when the last time your your I-20 was signed. So if you want to check with us to verify that it's still valid, that's fine. But once a year is more than enough.
All right, thank you, Brittany. So I'm going to try to go over this next portion quickly because we still have a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that we leave time at the end for questions. So today, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about student employment, but again, not too much in detail because we have more information sessions about these throughout the semester and on our website. So firstly, as an F-1 student, you are automatically allowed to work on campus. So that means you're receiving a Bentley paycheck. So you could work in the dining hall, or you could work in the library, or you could work in the academic technology center. So if you are able to get an on-campus job, which is sometimes difficult, specifically right now, it is okay, and you don't need any special authorization. The only thing to keep in mind is that you're only allowed by your F-1 visa to work 20 hours per week while school is in session. So during the academic year, 20 hours per week is your maximum. During any of the major vacations, so spring break, winter break, if there are jobs offered then, or summer, you can work full time. So generally that's up to 40 hours per week. And that's, again, automatically permitted with your F-1 visa. So off-campus employment is different. You have to have a special authorization to work off-campus. It is unlawful to work off-campus without this special permission, and it could get you in a lot of trouble. So working off campus without authorization could, this is not to scare you, but it is serious, could result in termination of your SEVIS record and a 10-year ban from the US, and it could disqualify you from getting another visa type in the future. So all this to say, we want to make sure that you are following all the rules and don't get yourself into any trouble, because there is a way you can get authorization, but you do have to follow the steps. So one way you can get authorization is called curricular practical training, or CPT. So you may do an internship during your time at Bentley. So an internship meaning you'll be working somewhere off campus for academic credit. So you'll enroll in a course. So you will need something called CPT authorization for this. So it is on your I-20. It's a special note that we put on there with your employer information. And again, this is for internships off campus for credit. Usually you're eligible to do this after one academic year. There are certain exceptions to that for transfer students or otherwise. So please contact us if you have any specific to you questions about that. And you can also talk to academic advising to learn about when you'll be eligible to enroll in one of those internship courses, and through that be able to get your CPT authorization to work off campus. And that can be full-time or part-time. And then you also may have heard of something called optional practical training, or OPT. That's something different. It is generally used after you graduate, and it allows you to work for 1 year after you complete your degree in whatever field you studied. So business analytics, you can work for 1 year in the business analytics field. This is a different type of application. It's not a simple note on your I-20 like CPT. It requires a government application, and it takes a long time to process, but that is something that we will guide you on as you get closer to finishing your degree. Again, always check with the CISS before doing paid or unpaid employment or internships, and we will be announcing when we will be having information sessions. We also have links to previous information sessions available on our website. So if you are getting a job on campus or off campus, you may need a social security number. So a social security number for US citizens is used for multiple purposes. It's used as a form of identification as well. For you all, it will only be used to pay taxes, so to take money out of your paycheck. Unfortunately, there are taxes that you need to pay. So when you get your first paid job offer, you will need to apply. The process is a little bit different right now because of COVID-19. So most of the applications are being handled remotely, so you don't actually go in. But we can guide you on that if you do end up needing a social security card. One thing to keep in mind is that this past semester we did have some issues with students sending because everything's remote and all applications are remote, we had students send original documents to the Social Security office in the mail, like their passports. And we have noticed that there's been issues in getting those back. So please, please, please contact us before you send anything to them, so that we can guide you on how you can do it and make sure that you don't lose any of your important documents. So yes, again, some offices may be working remotely. There's multiple Social Security offices. Please contact us if you have any questions. Also, something to mention, it is tax season in the US right now, which makes this even more important. So Social Security numbers are confidential. So you should never share your Social Security number with anyone. It's more confidential than your passport or your visa number. Again, you should never give it to anyone other than an employer who may need it to withdraw taxes from your paycheck. The government or the Social Security Administration or 911 or any of those places will not call you via telephone. And they will never ask you to pay a fee online, and you should never give out any of your personal information, including your Social Security number or bank account or card information over the phone. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because sometimes scams happen. So scams are when you may receive a fraudulent or fake phone call or an email. Sometimes they do target international students, unfortunately, because they know that you may not be familiar with some of the common scams in the US. So please, if you receive any phone call or email that looks suspicious to you, please let us know. They will never threaten deportation or any of those scary things over the phone or an email. And you should hang up and contact CISS immediately. Unfortunately, we receive these too. Brittany just said that she received a scam phone call this week. They're common. Just make sure you're keeping everything confidential and you're notifying us if you see anything suspicious. As long as you hang up and don't give your information, everything should be okay. Also, driver's licenses. So if you're in the US, you may want to get a driver's license while you're here. There are certain permissions where you may be able to drive for a certain period of time in the US without getting a license from the US. So you can get an international driving permit. That's not always the case. Sometimes you may need to apply for a driver's license through the RMV or Registry of Motor Vehicles in Massachusetts. We have information on the current student section of our website about how to apply in case you need that.
Okay, adjusting to life at Bentley. So the next few slides are going to just talk about culture shock in a sense, adjusting to a new climate at Bentley and also in the US larger context. So you might be in a new country, it might be your first time in the US, maybe it's not. Bentley may be a new experience for you, maybe different experience than you've had at previous institutions. Adjusting to the global new normal, definitely referring to COVID-19. The US is handling it differently than many other countries, so that could be a large adjustment for folks as well. And just know that everybody approaches these adjustments and changes differently. You may have, maybe somebody you know from home is either at Bentley or at another institution in the US. So try not to compare yourself too much and to definitely show yourself grace and kindness and know that it's normal that everybody does face different challenges adjusting. Some people adjust also don't have any challenges adjusting, so just keep that in mind. I'm gonna leave the activity up just for a moment for you to think about and reflect, but we're not going to share out right now, just as Anna said, to make sure we have time for questions at the end.
Some of you may not have arrived in the US yet, so this activity may not be relevant to you, but there are things to keep in mind when you do arrive. What your expectations were before you came, and maybe take note of how you feel when you first get here and maybe some things that surprise you.
So here's another image about adjusting, just different aspects of a culture. So the iceberg is a nice, it seems to be a symbol that folks use a lot thinking about different things around culture. So the behaviors and practices are the things you actually see on the surface, but there are so many other components that make up a culture and maybe even subcultures underneath the surface of the water. So you have climate, geography, demographics, economics, many things you can see listed here. And then the highlighted portion, there's a lot more to culture than you can just see with your eyes. And this is what can make adjusting to a new country or environment very difficult. I do want to take a moment though with this slide, maybe the next two, to just share that I'm going to speak for Anna a little bit, that both of us have been in your position before. We have lived in other countries. So we've had, you know, times dealing with adjustments, and I hope that you are able to then, that you feel comfortable coming to us and talking to us about that. So for me particularly, I have lived in Senegal, West Africa, France, which is in Western Europe, and then Vietnam, which is in Southeast Asia. So keeping that in mind, and I also speak fluent French. And Anna, do you want to share, or I can share for you some of your experiences?
Sure. I was an international student in Spain. And so I experienced many different adjustment issues as I was getting used to everything there. You know, even the most simple thing like going to the grocery store was different. So I'm happy to share some of my insight with you. Or, you know, if you have any questions or just want someone to talk to, we are always here.
Yeah. And I will add for both of us as well, we were students and we did work. So when you have your first internship, which will be great, work culture is different as well in different countries. So we're happy to share experiences or to hear about maybe any adjustments you may have in those environments. So adjusting to life, if you haven't seen this nice graph before, you know, people talk about a honeymoon phase when you first arrive, everything's new, great, you're just so excited to experience everything. Maybe a shorter period now with COVID, you know, a lot of things are not as open as they used to be, particularly if you're coming from a country, as I mentioned, who is dealing with the pandemic differently. There are different restraints and restrictions. Then withdrawal, you might be missing home, friends, things that you're used to experiencing. Recovery, you're feeling a little bit better. And then maybe you reach a moment of stabilization. But do know, even though it's kind of, you know, it seems linear, it's not. I think it's very cyclical. You can be in the honeymoon phase any time of your stay. You can be in the withdrawal phase any time of your stay. But we hope that this helps to just give you a sense and maybe some vocabulary around explaining different things you're feeling, and helps you communicate that with us should you feel. So some coping strategies: observe, listen, and learn about your new environment. Ask questions. I love asking questions. I love being asked questions, so please feel free. There are going to be some moments that are a little bit less formal than this, where that you can connect with other students and staff to ask questions. Share about your home country and your feelings. This is a little bit of a plug for one of the programs that we have called the Worldview Program. You can definitely get more information about that, but that allows you to go into different classrooms on campus and share with faculty and your fellow students about your experiences and things that you know from your travels where you've been around the world, as well as your home country and cultures. Connect with other people around campus as much as you can. There again are also digital spaces to do that now, so to be safe in the pandemic times. And then self-care, make sure that you are taking care of yourself and remembering to do the basic things like sleeping and eating, but also finding activities that you enjoy doing and that are still safe to do in these times. Some more graphics about adjusting to life at Bentley. These are some things you may feel. Again, it's normal to feel this way, and I'll be sharing some resources on how to deal with some of these different feelings as well. So just know that you are not alone. You know, we've been there. Some of your fellow classmates have been there. Not everybody is from Massachusetts even, or maybe it's the first time living on campus and being away from family. Just keeping those things in mind. So here are some resources. So we are at the top because you kind of know us by now. So the Center for International Students and Scholars, of course, the Multicultural Center is open to all students, and you can stop by there. I would encourage you to check out their website. They have programming as well, helps you to connect with other students on campus and also more staff members. The residential center, if you're living on campus, you already have access to them. They also will have programming, different activities going on virtually and on campus. The counseling center, please know that it is free to access as a student and it is also confidential. So mental health care in the US, we take it very seriously in the sense of having access to it, but also the confidentiality. So if you see a counselor or therapist in the counseling center, we won't know about it. They do not contact your family. They don't contact your sponsor. They won't contact your professors. Everything that is said there is confidential. So just keep that in mind. Know that that is definitely a place that you can go if you would like help with anything, would like perspective to speak with somebody. The Center for Health and Wellness has a great list of resources as well and programs. Again, you can access them online. Spiritual Life, again, as well. It is open to people of all different faiths and even people who don't necessarily have a faith practice. So I encourage you to reach out to them, contact them, resources, and connect with their students and staff. Turning it over to, oh no, this is still me, I'm sorry. So we have added some slides to address a little bit of the race situation or the history of race, let me say, in the United States. It's quite different than other places. Even places, first, we're a very diverse country. Many people from many different backgrounds, and also the way that the history of race within the US is just very, very particular. So I'm going to read through a couple of these, and the next few slides kind of addresses racial identity in the US. So race is a complex topic in the United States. As I mentioned, the history is rooted in slavery, primarily of people of African descent or heritage, and the genocide of Native Americans. Throughout US history, some laws and practices have changed to push for racial equity, but the legacy of racism continues to be a problem, and there's still a lot of work to be done. I will just add personally so that you know, when we talk about the history of those of African descent, many Black people, as we identify as Black American. And our history within the US is that we're not for sure of our origins outside of the US. That's how I explain it. So some people know, countries they came from, areas they came from before they lived in the US. That is not the case with many people who are Black in the US. Not all, but many. And then when we talk about the genocide of Native Americans, it's really important to note that the land that we all live on in the US was not discovered by Christopher Columbus, and that there were people living here before. And unfortunately, there was a genocide. They were targeted and oppressed and killed. It's a heavy topic, but it's important to note. And so part of knowing the history of the US and understanding how different races and different groups of people are treated is about knowing this history. So it's a small kind of snapshot of what's going on, but hopefully this will help you in future conversations you'll have with people both at Bentley and in the US. And of course, if you want to talk more about it, I'm happy to share some more. So race The second kind of definition here, generally, excuse me, refers to distinctive physical traits, particularly skin color. As I mentioned, I identify as Black American. It is often considered a social construct, as humans created this classification system, even though human diversity spans far beyond skin color. What it means to be a part of a specific category is often determined by local or national history and social interpretations. Lots to unpack there, but again, hopefully giving you some insight and vocabulary for future interactions and experiences that you'll have in the US or with people who live in or are from the United States. Lastly, racism, defined as prejudice or discrimination directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is marginalized. Racism can show up as conscious or unconscious beliefs and biases, internalized, treating others differently, defined as interpersonal, unfair policies and practices in schools or workplaces, institutional, or societal structural. Those are different levels of racism. So structural is like the larger, institutional gets a little bit smaller, interpersonal even smaller, and then lastly, internalized. And I also do want to mention that the university, Bentley, we are working a lot on racial justice and our place in the struggle or the movement for racial justice for all people within the US. And a lot of this was kind of put in, how do I want to say this? There was an event this summer where a Black man was murdered by a police officer. And that honestly got a lot of the country talking about the importance of healing from racial discrimination and injustices, and help Bentley to get on the track and really coming up with ways that they could address racial injustices and work toward a more racially just Bentley as well as United States. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, these are words that you will hear, I'm sure, a lot around Bentley. At Bentley, we do celebrate our differences. I define diversity just as that difference, and encourage curiosity. Diverse backgrounds, beliefs, and life experiences all come together at Bentley, making it a vibrant place to learn, to live, learn, and grow. And again, just to note that we're active in our work. We still have a lot of work to do as an institution, but we're very excited to have you here and to help us in our work and to help, and we're excited for you to participate in the work.
So you may be asking, and Brittany's touched on it a little bit, but why is this being included in our orientation, or why do we need to know about this as international students? And she's already mentioned some of this, but the reason why it's important is because you're probably going to hear about it during your time here. You may hear about race or racism, or very unfortunately, you may experience instances of racism yourself. We hope that that does not happen, but we want you to know about it so that you can identify it. We also want you to know because you may, now that you are living in the US, assuming you're living in the US this semester, you may be classified in a different way than you're used to. Again, a lot of race has to do with, local history and interpretation. So maybe it's your first time in the US being known or called Black, or the first time being called Asian instead of, Vietnamese or Korean or Chinese. So again, this may be a new identity when you come to the US. And as Brittany said, you may be hearing about it. It's a very prominent topic of conversation right now, issues of race and racial justice in the news, based on the events of the past year, media coverage of the Black Lives Matter movement and the current political climate. And as I mentioned, it's important that you understand what racism is so that you can avoid both being a participant in it, and so that you can report any issues that you may unfortunately encounter. So, if someone says something to you or acts or does some sort of behavior towards you It's important that you know how to identify what racism is. And as Brittany mentioned, Bentley is committed to working towards racial justice, and this is why we're mentioning this to you within and outside of our community. And we want to make sure our office and Bentley as a whole wants to make sure that it's a welcoming place for all students, faculty, and staff. So that includes you all as international students, people across different religious backgrounds, racial backgrounds, etc. So this is, I assume during orientation, you're probably going to do a lot of different activities on identity development. This is just something to get you thinking. This is an example image right here. When we talk about diversity, as Brittany said, it's difference. And at Bentley, each and every individual has different aspects that make up who you are. So there are different facets to you. You may be German, and you may be Jewish, you may be a soccer player, you may be a high school student, or now a college student. There's so many different parts of you, and they all make up who you are. And at Bentley, we value each and every identity. And it's also, as we mentioned, there may be some identities that you're taking on for the first time. So you're an international student for the first time, or you may be considered Black for the first time when you haven't before. So this is just an introduction to the conversation about both identity and race. And this all comes back to the fact that Bentley has specific core values. So these are the things that Bentley believes in. And again, one of our core values is diversity, and our difference is what makes our Bentley community stronger. So if you want to find ways to get involved again, as I mentioned earlier, CISS is under the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or the Equity and Inclusion. So there are different offices, and they put on different programs, and there's different student groups that you can join based on different identities. So we have a link here. I'm sure we will be sharing this presentation with you. There is also, Bentley, as I mentioned, has made a renewed commitment to racial justice. So we also have linked that here. And there's also a website you can go to if you want to report something that happens on campus. We hope that these will not happen to you, but there is a specific way that you can report, and you can also learn some examples of incidents that have happened so that you know how to identify them. And that is called BIRT reporting, bias incident reporting. CISS events, so we will also be putting on several programs regarding race and racial justice this semester, and how it ties in with international students and international themes. So please continue to check your email, and we'll be notifying you about those.
And just wanting to plug again, also letting you know that you can always come to us. So if you're not sure about something you're experiencing, or if you have a question, please feel free to come to us. We're happy to help you work through things, process them, talk them out. So your professors care too. We're considered staff, but yes, as you get closer to your professors, you'll see them even virtually. We encourage you to reach out to them as well about maybe race in the US or on campus, different things you've experienced, but as well as different academic things going on. So progress reports are actually required for all first-year students. It is a good thing. Do not, fret if you receive a progress report. It's really just to make sure that you have access to all the resources you need to be as successful a student at Bentley as possible. After your first semester, you will only receive a progress report if your GPA falls below a 2.3. And again, this is just kind of a note to make sure, okay, are you accessing all of the resources that you could be accessing? Are there any accommodations that possibly could be made to make sure that you are, your time at Bentley is used the best way that you can. And again, getting off to a good start. Office hours, I really encourage you to attend office hours. They should be listed on the syllabi or the syllabus of your course. You can go if you have a specific question. It's also nice just to go and start getting to know your professors and faculty in person. Pro tip, it's also good because you might want a recommendation later. So it's a great time to start making good contacts and relationships with your professors instead of asking just in that time. If you have an ongoing conversation, ongoing time just to pop in, say hello, ask a couple of nice questions, it makes it easier to ask for that recommendation later on down the road. Some other resources to consider are the ESOL Center, English as a Second or Other Language Center, as well as various tutoring for different subjects. Get involved as much as you can. Clubs and organizations have meetings online. There's a directory link here. If you look online, I'm sure you can find, it will be under SP&E, Student Programs and Engagement. Lots of different programs going on. I don't know, if you can't find an organization, you could even think of starting an organization. We would love to have you. And then the Worldview program that I mentioned earlier, it's an opportunity to give presentations around campus to talk about your home country or other places that you've had experiences as a student or living. Cultural differences between your home country or another country in the US and your unique experiences. It's great to speak to other students. If you are an undergraduate student, you can actually, a graduate or undergrad, you will be able to participate in both graduate and undergraduate courses. So that's a nice kind of exchange of ideas there. Programs and events may be different this year. It's kind of nice to be on the second half of the COVID semesters because I think we have a good handle on virtual events at this point. So there are lots of opportunities for you to connect. Last, again, some resources to look at. I went through these earlier. Our contact information, as always, email is honestly the best way to reach us, but we are available via phone, and then of course the Zoom advising hours, as Anna mentioned earlier. And the email is ga_CISS@bentley.edu. And in the couple of minutes we have left, if anybody has questions, I'm going to come out. Sorry, is there anything you wanted to add, Anna? Okay, I'm going to.
I don't think so. Congratulations, everyone, for making it to the end. I know that was a very long presentation. Usually it's a lot easier because we're up and talking to you in person, and we're able to be a little bit more interactive. So please, we're here.